story title: The Lantern, Keeper of Moonlit Harbor, Part 1. Hello, dear friend, and welcome to Dreamcove, your peaceful place to slow down, let go of today's worries, and gently drift toward a night of deep and restful sleep. We're truly grateful that you've chosen to spend this quiet evening with us. As you settle into a comfortable position, allow your breathing to become slow and easy. There is nothing left to finish, nowhere else you need to be, and nothing expected of you except to rest. Let every gentle word become as soft as a calm wave upon a quiet shore, carrying your thoughts farther away with every passing moment. Tonight, we'll journey to a place where time moves slowly, where kindness is never hurried, and where every peaceful step leads a little closer to home. So, close your eyes whenever they feel ready. Relax your shoulders and let the story begin. Long before busy cities filled the world with noise, there was a tiny harbor hidden between gentle cliffs and the endless sea. Few travelers ever found it, and those who did often existed, or if they had simply dreamed of it, beneath a peaceful night sky. The people who lived there called it Moonlit Harbor, a place where hundreds of lanterns reflecting across calm water like scattered golden stars. The sea was never restless there. Even the wind seemed to whisper instead of speak. Along the quiet shoreline stood a weathered lighthouse built from pale gray stone. It was not the tallest lighthouse in the world, nor the brightest, but every sailor who had ever seen its gentle light remembered the same feeling. It felt like coming home. Each evening, before the first stars appeared, an elderly lantern keeper named Elias climbed the winding staircase inside the lighthouse. His footsteps were slow and steady, never rushed, never late. He believed that anything done with peace should never be hurried. At the top, he carefully polished the great glass windows until they shone beneath the fading light of dusk. Then, with calm hands and a grateful heart, he lit the great beacon. A warm golden light slowly turned across the sleeping sea, reaching farther than the eye could see. Elias rested beside the window and quietly smiled as gentle waves rolled against the cliffs below. Almost every evening, he whispered the same simple blessing into the cool night air. May every traveler find peace, and may every heart remember the way home. The breeze carried his words across the silver water, far beyond the horizon, where the moon slowly climbed into the sky. A small sailboat drifted peacefully upon the quiet sea. Someone was sailing toward Moonlit Harbor without knowing that this gentle place was about to change his life in the most peaceful way imaginable. Far beyond the quiet shoreline, the little sailboat continued drifting across the silver sea. Its white sail moved gently with the evening breeze, never struggling against the wind, simply following wherever the calm water wished to lead it. Standing near the bow was a young traveler named Oliver. He watched the moonlight dance upon the waves, feeling a quiet stillness that had been missing from his life for many years. He had traveled through crowded cities, crossed busy streets, and spent countless days chasing one goal after another, believing happiness was always waiting somewhere farther ahead. Yet, with every journey, he carried home the same tired heart. Tonight felt different. There were no loud voices, no rushing clocks, and no endless list of things to do. There was only the peaceful sound of water brushing against the wooden boat and the cool breeze resting gently upon his face. He closed his eyes for a slow breath and noticed something he had almost forgotten. Silence could be comforting. It did not need to be filled. It simply invited the heart to rest. As the boat drifted farther through the moonlit sea, a warm, golden light slowly appeared in the distance. At first, it looked like a single bright star resting upon the horizon. With every gentle wave, however, the light became clearer, warmer, and somehow familiar. Oliver could not explain why, but seeing that distant lighthouse filled him with an unexpected feeling of safety. It asked nothing of him. It simply waited with quiet patience, shining across the water like an old friend, leaving a light on through the night. The sea remained calm beneath the endless sky, while thousands of tiny stars reflected upon the water until it became impossible to tell where the ocean ended and the heavens began. Oliver smiled softly. For the first time in many years, he stopped wondering where tomorrow would take him. Instead, he allowed himself to enjoy the simple beauty of the present moment, listening as the waves gently carried him toward the peaceful harbor, waiting beneath the quiet stars. As the sailboat drew closer, Moonlit Harbor slowly revealed itself beneath the soft glow of the moon. Small wooden cottages rested peacefully along the shoreline, their windows glowing with warm amber light. Tiny lanterns hung beside every doorway, swaying gently in the evening breeze. The harbor was wonderfully quiet. There were no hurried footsteps, no loud conversations, and no restless sounds to disturb the peaceful night. Only the slow rhythm of the sea and the distant song of gentle waves meeting the shore. Oliver guided the sailboat toward an old wooden dock. The boat touched the pier so softly that it seemed the sea itself had carefully placed it there. He tied the rope, picked up his small leather bag, and stepped onto the weathered planks. The cool wood beneath his feet felt steady and welcoming. He took a slow breath, filling his lungs with the fresh scent of salt air. Cedar, lavender, and warm bread drifting from a nearby bakery. Every breath seemed to quiet his thoughts a little more. Not far away, a sleepy cat stretched beneath a glowing lantern before curling into a comfortable ball once again. White seabirds rested silently upon old wooden posts, their feathers shining like silver beneath the moonlight. Even the flowers growing beside the stone path appeared to move slowly, as though they too had learned never to rush. Oliver stood quietly, taking in every peaceful detail. He suddenly realized something surprising. No one here seemed to be chasing time. In every place he had visited before, people hurried from one task to the next, always believing the next hour would be more important than the present one. But here, every moment seemed complete, exactly as it was. A gentle breeze brushed across his face. Somewhere nearby, A wind chime sang a soft melody that rose and faded with the night air. Its delicate notes blended perfectly with the whispering waves. Oliver smiled without even noticing. The tightness that had rested inside his heart for so long began to loosen. Little by little, he looked toward the lighthouse, standing proudly at the edge of the harbor. Its warm golden light continued turning slowly across the sea, never rushing, never stopping. It reminded him that the most comforting things in life often move quietly, asking for nothing except a little patience. As he began walking along the lantern-lit path, he had the gentle feeling that this peaceful harbor had been waiting for him all along, even though they had never met before. Part 4. Oliver followed the lantern-lit path at an easy, unhurried pace. Every step seemed softer than the last, as though the old stone walkway had quietly learned to welcome tired travelers. The harbor rested beneath a sky filled with countless stars, and the moon painted gentle ribbons of silver across the calm sea. The cool breeze carried the peaceful fragrance of blooming lavender, fresh pine, warm cedar, and distant bread cooling on wooden shelves. Somewhere nearby, leaves whispered together, high above the path, while a tiny stream flowed gently toward the ocean with a sound so delicate that it almost blended into silence. Oliver noticed that every cottage had a small lantern glowing beside its door. None of them were bright enough to chase away the night. Instead, they simply added a quiet warmth to the darkness, reminding anyone who passed that even the smallest light could make the world feel welcoming. As he continued walking, he saw an elderly woman placing a knitted blanket over a wooden chair left on her porch. She smiled kindly as she noticed him, offering nothing more than a gentle nod before returning indoors. There was no curiosity, no interruption, only the quiet kindness of someone who believed every traveler deserved peace. Oliver smiled back and continued on his way. He soon reached a narrow stone bridge crossing a clear stream. The water beneath reflected the stars so perfectly that it seemed Another sky had been hidden below the bridge. Tiny fish drifted lazily through the moonlit water, while fireflies floated among the tall grass like little golden lanterns dancing upon the breeze. Oliver rested both hands upon the smooth stone railing and remained there for several peaceful moments. He listened to the flowing water, the distant waves, and the quiet breathing of the night itself. It had been many years since he had allowed himself to simply stand still, without wondering what should come next. For the first time in a very long while, he realized that not every moment needed to be filled with plans. Some moments were complete simply because they were peaceful. He closed his eyes for one slow breath, then another, feeling the cool air gently rise and fall within him. When he opened them again, he noticed the lighthouse turning its warm golden light across the sea once more. The steady beam moved with perfect patience, never rushing ahead, never looking back, simply continuing its gentle purpose through the quiet night. Watching it filled Oliver with a calm he could not explain. Without speaking a single word, he understood that perhaps life was not asking him to move faster. Perhaps it was gently inviting him to move more peacefully. With that comforting thought resting quietly in his heart, he stepped away from the bridge and continued deeper into Moonlit Harbor, where the peaceful night still held many gentle stories waiting to be discovered. Oliver continued along the quiet path until he reached a small garden hidden behind an old white stone wall. A simple wooden gate stood slightly open, as if it had been patiently waiting for someone to arrive. He stepped inside and immediately noticed that the air felt even calmer there. Rows of lavender, jasmine, rosemary, and tiny white flowers swayed gently beneath the moonlight, filling the garden with a soothing fragrance. A narrow stone path curved between the flower beds toward a small wooden bench beneath an ancient oak tree. Every leaf moved softly in the cool night breeze, creating a peaceful whisper that blended beautifully with the distant sound of the sea. Oliver sat on the bench and allowed himself to simply listen. Somewhere nearby, a small fountain released a slow stream of clear water into a round stone basin. The gentle sound seemed to wash away every restless thought that had followed him for so many years. He watched the moon's reflection ripple across the water, changing shape with every tiny movement before becoming perfectly still again. It reminded him that even a troubled mind could become peaceful if given enough patience. As he sat quietly, an elderly woman appeared from a nearby cottage, carrying a small lantern. Her silver hair rested neatly beneath a light blue shawl, and her smile was as warm as the lantern she held. "Good evening," she said softly. "My name is Clara. I take care of this garden." Oliver returned her gentle smile and thanked her for allowing him to enjoy such a peaceful place. Clara looked around at the flowers before speaking again. "Many people believe flowers bloom because of sunshine alone," she said. "But they also bloom because each day they are given time." Oliver looked at the blossoms glowing beneath the moonlight. None of them seemed to hurry. None of them competed with the others. Each flower simply opened when its own season arrived. The thought settled gently within his heart. For so long he had measured his life against the speed of everyone around him, forgetting that every journey has its own rhythm. Clara filled a small watering can from the fountain and slowly watered the flowers one by one, never missing a single plant. She treated each one with the same quiet care, whether it was large or small. Oliver watched in silence, realizing that kindness often revealed itself through simple daily moments rather than extraordinary acts. Above them, the stars continued shining with patient beauty, while the lighthouse casts its warm beam across the sleeping sea. The peaceful garden seemed untouched by time itself. As Oliver rose from the bench, Clara smiled gently and pointed toward a winding path disappearing between tall pine trees. "If you follow that path tomorrow evening," she whispered, "you'll discover a place where the forest tells its quietest stories. Oliver thanked her once more before continuing his slow walk beneath the peaceful sky. Part 2. The following evening arrived with the same gentle calm that seemed to bless every corner of Moonlit Harbor. As the last golden light of sunset faded beyond the sea, Oliver remembered Clara's quiet words and followed the narrow path leading into the pine forest. The trees stood tall and graceful, their branches swaying softly in the cool breeze. Moonlight slipped through the leaves, painting silver patterns across the forest floor. The air smelled of pine needles, fresh moss, and damp earth after the evening dew. Every breath felt clean, slow, and peaceful. Oliver walked without hurry, listening to the gentle rustle of leaves and the distant call of a night bird somewhere high among the branches. Soon he came upon a small clearing where an old wooden swing hung from the strongest limb of a great oak tree. It moved ever so slightly in the breeze, although no one sat upon it. Nearby rested a smooth stone with a few simple words carved into its surface. The heart finds its way when the feet stop. Rushing, Oliver smiled softly and sat upon the swing. He let it move only a little, feeling the quiet rhythm match the steady beating of his heart. Looking upward, he saw thousands of stars shining through the openings between the branches. They had no need to compete with one another. Each star simply offered its own gentle light. The thought brought him unexpected comfort. For many years he had believed he must always do more, become more, and move faster. Yet here, surrounded by the peaceful forest, he wondered if a meaningful life could also be a quiet one. A small rabbit appeared from the bushes, paused for a curious glance, and then calmly disappeared into the tall grass. The forest remained unafraid, welcoming every creature with the same gentle silence. Oliver closed his eyes for a long, slow breath. The cool night air filled his lungs, and with each exhale, he felt another piece of the day's weight quietly drift away. When he opened his eyes again, the lighthouse beams swept gently through the trees for just a moment before continuing across the distant sea. It was enough to remind him that even when the path ahead could not be fully seen, a single peaceful light was often all that was needed to keep moving forward. With a grateful heart, Oliver rose from the swing and continued along the forest path, knowing that Moonlit Harbor was gently teaching him lessons that could never be learned in a hurried world. Oliver followed the forest trail until the trees slowly opened into a quiet meadow, bathed in soft moonlight. Gentle wildflowers covered the ground like a peaceful blanket, their petals glowing faintly beneath the stars. A narrow stream curved through the meadow, moving so calmly that it reflected the sky almost perfectly. Oliver knelt beside the water and watched the stars shimmer with every tiny ripple before becoming still once again. He realized that the stream never struggled to reach the sea. It simply flowed at its own gentle pace, trusting that every turn belonged to its journey. That simple thought rested quietly within his heart. He continued walking until he found an old wooden bench facing the open meadow. Sitting there, he listened to the peaceful chorus of crickets, the whisper of tall grass, and the distant sound of waves beyond the trees. None of the sounds competed with one another. Together, they created a quiet melody that seemed to slow every passing thought. Oliver leaned back and looked toward the endless sky. He remembered how often he had rushed through evenings without ever noticing the stars above him. Tonight, there was nowhere else to be. The night itself was enough. A gentle breeze crossed the meadow, carrying the sweet fragrance of wildflowers and fresh earth. It felt as though nature was offering a quiet reminder that peace is rarely found by searching harder. More often, it appears when we become still enough to notice it. Oliver smiled gently, breathing in the cool air, one slow breath at a time. In the distance, the warm light of the lighthouse appeared between the trees, turning patiently across the sea, just as it had every evening before. It never hurried, never paused, and never asked for recognition. It simply continued its quiet purpose, watching its distant glow. Oliver understood that a peaceful life was built in the same way, through small, steady moments of kindness, patience, and gratitude. As the moon climbed higher above the meadow, he quietly stood and began walking back toward the harbor, carrying with him a heart that felt lighter than it had in many years, while the peaceful night continued to guide every gentle step home. Oliver returned to Moonlit Harbor long after the moon had climbed high above the quiet sea. The lanterns along the wooden docks glowed with the same warm light that had welcomed generations of travelers before him. As he walked beside the calm water, he noticed how every reflection moved gently with the waves before, becoming peaceful again. It reminded him that even when life changes, calm can always return with a little patience. The harbor was almost silent. A small fishing boat rocked softly against the pier, while a sleepy seabird rested with its head tucked beneath its wing. The cool breeze carried the comforting scent of salt air, cedar wood, and lavender from the nearby gardens. Oliver paused at the end of the dock and looked across the endless sea. The horizon stretched quietly beneath thousands of stars, each one shining without hurry. He thought about the many years he had spent chasing distant dreams, believing peace could only be found somewhere else. Yet here, in this gentle harbor, he was beginning to understand that peace had never been waiting at the end of the journey. It had been quietly waiting inside the moments he used to overlook. Just then, the familiar golden beam from the lighthouse swept across the water once more. Oliver watched it glide over the sea with calm certainty, disappearing into the distance before slowly returning again. Its steady rhythm felt almost like a gentle heartbeat, watching over the harbor through the night. He smiled softly, grateful for the quiet lessons that asked nothing from him except to slow down and notice them. Nearby, a wooden bench overlooked the ocean, and he sat there for a while, listening to the waves meeting the shore in slow, peaceful whispers. Each wave arrived without force and returned without regret, leaving only a soft, soothing sound behind. Oliver closed his eyes for a long, comfortable breath, allowing the rhythm of the sea to settle deep within him. When he opened them again, he noticed the first hint of mist beginning to drift across the water, wrapping the harbor in a gentle silver blanket. Everything appeared softer than before, as though the night itself were quietly preparing the world for sleep. With one final glance toward the lighthouse, Oliver rose from the bench and continued his slow walk along the lantern-lit path, feeling that tomorrow would bring another quiet lesson, another peaceful smile, and another gentle reminder that the most beautiful journeys are never the ones rushed, but the ones patiently lived. Morning arrived quietly over Moonlit Harbor, not with loud colors or hurried sounds, but with a soft, golden light that slowly spread across the sea. Oliver awoke to the gentle singing of small birds outside his window. He opened the shutters and breathed in the fresh morning air, carrying the scent of salt water, blooming flowers, and warm bread from the village bakery. The harbor was already awake, yet no one seemed to rush. Fishermen prepared their boats with calm smiles. Neighbors greeted one another with quiet kindness, and children walked slowly along the stone paths, laughing gently as they watched butterflies drift through the gardens. Oliver stepped outside and followed the familiar road toward the lighthouse. Along the way, he noticed something he had never paid attention to before. Every person he passed looked fully present in the moment. They weren't walking while staring at the ground or thinking about somewhere else. They noticed the flowers, the breeze, the sound of the waves, and each friendly face they met. It was as though the entire village had learned a secret that the busy world had forgotten. When Oliver reached the lighthouse, he found Elias sitting on a wooden chair facing the sea, with a warm cup of tea resting beside him. The old lantern keeper smiled as Oliver approached and invited him to sit without saying a word. Together, they watched the gentle waves roll toward the shore. After several peaceful minutes, Elias finally spoke. "Do you know why the sea never grows tired?" Oliver shook his head. Elias looked toward the endless horizon and smiled, because it never tries to become the mountain. It is content to be the sea. Oliver quietly repeated those words in his mind. They felt simple, yet they carried a quiet wisdom. For many years, he had compared his life to the lives of others, believing he always needed to become something different before he could feel complete. But perhaps peace began the moment a person accepted the beauty of their own path. A gentle breeze passed through the open windows of the lighthouse, carrying the distant sound of bells from the harbor. The golden light of morning sparkled across the water like countless tiny diamonds. Oliver closed his eyes for a slow breath and felt gratitude settle gently within him. He realized that the greatest gift Moonlit Harbor had given him was not a place, but a new way of seeing the world, one quiet moment at a time. That evening, after the sun had quietly slipped beyond the horizon, Oliver wandered toward the western edge of Moonlit Harbor, where a narrow path followed the coastline. The sea glowed beneath the rising moon, and every gentle wave carried a silver shimmer toward the shore before softly fading into the sand. The air was cool and fresh, filled with the peaceful scent of pine trees, sea salt, and wild flowers growing between the rocks. Oliver walked slowly, enjoying the comforting rhythm of his footsteps. Before long, he discovered a weathered wooden bench facing the open ocean. It looked as though it had welcomed countless quiet evenings over many years. He sat down and listened. There was no music except the whisper of the waves, the distant call of a seabird, and the soft breeze moving through the tall grass. It was enough. As he watched the moonlight dance upon the water, he remembered how often he had believed that happiness belonged somewhere in the future. Yet, this simple evening asked nothing from him except to be present. He noticed how the sea never hurried to reach the shore. Every wave arrived at exactly the right moment, then peacefully returned without regret. Nature seemed to understand something people often forgot. There was beauty in taking one's time. Oliver smiled gently as another cool breeze brushed across his face. High above, The stars appeared, one by one, until the entire sky sparkled with quiet light. He realized that no star tried to outshine another. Each simply offered its own light, trusting it was enough. The thought settled warmly within him. He no longer felt the need to race through life, searching for something more. Perhaps the life he had been looking for had always been built from simple moments like this one. After sitting there for a long while, he stood and began walking back toward the harbor. In the distance, the familiar lighthouse turned its golden beam across the sea with the same patient rhythm it had kept every night. Seeing its gentle light, Oliver felt a quiet sense of gratitude. Some places changed a person, not through grand adventures, but through peaceful evenings, kind words, and gentle silence. As he reached the lantern-lit path leading home, he looked once more toward the calm ocean and silently thanked the night for reminding him that a peaceful heart is never found by moving faster, but by learning to slow down enough to notice the beauty that has been quietly waiting all along. The days passed gently in Moonlit Harbor, and before Oliver realized it, the peaceful rhythm of the village had become a part of his own heart. He no longer woke with hurried thoughts or counted the hours ahead. Instead, each morning began with a slow breath, a quiet smile, and the comforting sound of waves greeting the shore. On this particular evening, he walked toward a quiet hill overlooking the harbor. A winding path of smooth stones led him upward between tall pine trees whose branches swayed softly beneath the cool breeze. As he reached the top, he found a single wooden chair facing the sea. It seemed to have been placed there for anyone who simply wished to sit and watch the sky. Oliver settled into the chair as the first evening stars appeared above the horizon. One by one, tiny lights filled the heavens until the night became a peaceful blanket, stretching endlessly overhead. The harbor below glowed with warm lanterns, while the lighthouse continued its patient circle across the calm water. Everything moved with quiet purpose, never asking the night to arrive more quickly, or the morning to come too soon. Oliver rested his hands comfortably and listened to the silence. It was no longer unfamiliar. It felt like an old friend. The breeze carried the gentle fragrance of lavender and cedar, and somewhere far below, a bell rang softly as a fishing boat returned to the dock. The sound slowly faded into the evening, leaving only the whisper of the wind. Oliver closed his eyes and thought about the life he had lived before arriving here. He remembered the endless rush, the crowded streets, and the constant feeling that he was always one step behind. Those memories no longer brought sadness. They simply reminded him how far his heart had traveled. When he opened his eyes again, he noticed a single shooting star gliding quietly across the sky before disappearing into the darkness. He smiled, not because he wished for anything, but because he finally understood that contentment did not come from having everything. It came from appreciating what was already here. The moon climbed a little higher, bathing the hill in soft silver light. Oliver remained there for a while longer, breathing slowly, listening carefully, and allowing the peaceful night to settle deeply within him. As he finally stood to return to the harbor, he carried with him a quiet certainty that some of life's greatest treasures are not found in distant places, but in calm moments that gently remind us we are exactly where we need to be.